in these groups, once again, our primary objective is for you to give a presentation, where you will be picking an argument that is used in current events, and you're going to analyze it using the tools that we've learned in class. And that's why we'll try to give these presentations in the second half of the class after we've learned a few things that we can employ in the presentations. I encourage you to be creative. There are arguments being used right now to justify the use of drones, to sneak a peek at your email, whether we need a minimum wage. That's a big argument in the State of the Union. Should we give the country a raise? Yes, we should give the country a raise. But there are arguments against the minimum wage. Joe Scarborough, a number of conservatives will lay out that argument aggressively, that if we raise the minimum wage, it'll be less jobs. Less jobs. So arguments are being used right now, you know, to change the world, change what our country is doing. And the president offered a shorter one last night. It was a shorter State of the Union. Speaking of arguments, what do you think about the president's argument last night about where our country should go? Did he offer an argument that any of you found compelling?
I've noticed with almost every politician, they'll say, like, for example, our country needs a raise. Who can disagree with that? I've seen it across the board. They'll make these blanket statements where you'll be insane not to agree with it, but the direction of how you'll get there is where the real debate, real argument would come in.
Correct. Yet we can understand, given that he's got to work with a Republican Party that has made a commitment that if his name's on it, they're going against it.
Of course.
So in a way, in order for him to get anything done, it has to have that broad acceptance. But from the outside, of course, everybody needs a raise. But Joe Scarborough make a strong argument that that is, a waste.
Even the Republican or free market argument for against minimum wage argues that no minimum wage will eventually end to giving you more value for your dollar. So even they're arguing, we want to give you a raise. And it still just boils down to which direction you want to go. And
these views are indebted to social philosophies and, in particular, economic philosophies, demand side versus supply side. And on the left, the Democrats are going to tend to be, which one, demand or supply side? Democrats are demand side, tend to be demand side. And so the argument here is that we increase economic growth by increasing demand. That is the demand for goods. Well, what creates demand? People with money. And by raising the minimum wage, you're going to increase demand. That should increase economic growth. On the other side, however, there are many economists, philosophers who argue that the way we increase economic growth is by increasing the ability to provide supply. So we decrease taxation on businesses, we decrease the regulation of businesses, and we make it easier for businesses to produce products. That makes it easier for businesses to make a profit and make it easier for economic growth to occur. And on that side, your focus will be on reducing taxation on businesses and reducing regulation on businesses. Reagan, Bush, that's the approach. Democrats, Clinton, Obama, we're going to focus more on the middle class and try to increase the wages and benefits for the middle class, and that'll put more money in the consumer's pocket and stimulate economic growth. So you really have debates on either side, and people can look at the same thing and argue different ways. Anything that stuck, did anybody watch, how many watched the State of the Union? Yeah, it's not as, and even they were saying it's a kind of a small or modest proposal that he's making. And once again, have you guys been watching what happens to his big proposals? They get folded up and shoved right up, So yeah, you're gonna get modest at this point. Any other comments, questions about the state of our union? Interesting.
I wish I could have seen it.
you want, you can get it on YouTube, I suspect. And they replay it on some of those channels.
C-SPAN 40.
Was interesting, Republican response. Anybody see the Republican response?
Yeah.
It was the mother, which one was it?
So why do
There's a few of them.
Republicans get a woman to speak for them during the Republican response? Anybody paying attention here?
I think I'm so sure.
Because every time a Republican opens his mouth about women, he says something stupid. And the most recent thing was Huckabee saying that covering birth control and insurance is like a sugar daddy helping women who can't control their libido. That's insulting to
It
women.
shouldn't, but it doesn't pop in his head. You shouldn't use women and sugar daddy in the same sentence.
Moreover,
Yeah.
you shouldn't talk about birth control and insurance because right now Viagra is covered. And so when you're covering Viagra and you're not covering birth control for women, you need to shut up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they have a woman sitting down, and they're definitely trying to counter that war on women type thing. And I'm sure you guys were very persuaded by it. Nice one. She was from Washington, a Republican congressman from Washington, was it Washington State? I forget which one. But interesting that the Republicans had a woman come out. No Tea Partiers there. So are we set with our groups? Any questions about the presentations?
Can I join a group?
You can, absolutely. Join anyone you like. There's plenty of room in all of those. And so you're going to pick an argument. Eventually, we're going to present these in the second half of the class. 10 minutes, so it's not a big deal. Often the biggest struggle is getting it down just to the 10-minute frame. 10 minutes in front of class goes fast.
Now, are we breaking down an argument, or are we trying to build an argument?
Interesting question. So I think what, I'm going to leave a lot of leeway here, but you'll be looking at an argument that has already been constructed. And now you can construct a argument against that argument, and you will be analyzing that argument, and you'll be applying what you know to that argument. So a kind of critical analysis of an argument being used right now is kind of what we'll be focusing on. And not a big deal, but I will tell you to take these presentations seriously. Well, number one, it's part of your grade in this class, but there's a reason that we have these group activities in class. When you get out in the private sector, you're going to be working with individuals and groups to get things done. I am a co-chair of a sustainability committee. We're a group that's running an efficiency contest right now. We come together and as a group, we work on a bunch of stuff. And as a group, you can accomplish much more than you can as an individual. This efficiency contest is a great example. This is an idea that I brought with me from Florida, but I get it in this group, and all these people start coming up with ideas. Like our IT guy came up with the idea of doing the contest in 2 stages, like an architecture contest. More involved in the first round, fewer in the second round, and it really helps. You can get a lot of people involved, but the proposals that come out the other end are highly detailed and implementable. And I would have never come up with that idea by myself. And we had like 5 of those over the process of the development of this project. 2 phases. One person came up with an idea for how to fund it using an existing employee recognition award. All this stuff that I had no ability to think about gets into this contest because we're working as a group. So when you get out into the private sector and you do your job, whatever it is, a lawyer, doctor, teacher, whatever, you're going to be working with groups of people. You're going to be tasked with doing some creative stuff. And some people know how to do this. Some people, when they get with others, make things happen. And some people, I like working with him. Yeah, let's work with that guy. Some people, you would rather stick needles in your eyes than work with this individual. And if you are working with this individual, you're thinking about how fast you can get away. Yes, we don't hire those people. We don't hire those people. Don't be those kind of people. Think about it, you know? So in these groups, if you work real well and you can creatively work with others, there can kind of be a, you know, a greater creativity that emerges from the group than just one individual. And if you do this well, when then you go out and get on your job, you'll be able to do it well. And that will help you get jobs, get promotions, and work your way up. Great people who achieve great things always do it working with others. You know, you really can accomplish more working with others. So in these groups, keep that in mind, have fun, and also make sure that the presentation, you know, informs the class. Make sure. So any questions about our group presentations? If you do have any, just let me know. We're happy to talk about it. And over the course of the semester, I'll leave some time for everybody to kind of occasionally get together into groups and we can work on these projects as we go.
How is that efficiency contest going? You guys on the second round already?
We are. Thank goodness, we had 25 proposals from 21 students, faculty, and staff.
Mm-hmm.
I was so scared to get 4 bombs, you know, or something, but we had 25 proposals, some of them extremely impressive. One of them on composting. I learned that we actually pay money to throw away our food waste right now.
Yeah.
And this is a huge thing. Apparently in our country, we throw away 40% of the food. 40. We are sick puppies, man. You know, seriously, there are people starving and we're throwing food away. So there are businesses emerging now that you're throwing it away, give it to me, I'll compost it, throw it away, give it to me, I'll feed it to the poor. You know, there are business models out there with that. 40%. And if we really stayed to the diet that we need to be on, we'd be throwing away like 70. Bad joke. Because obesity is a huge issue in our country, you know, as we all should know at this point.
Panera, they volunteer in certain communities to donate all their 2-day-old pastries to
Really?
homeless shelters. There has to be a separate group that goes and asks. They can't do it on their own according to their food regulations, county regulations. Another group has to come, they have to trade the food off, and then that secondary group will donate to food shelters.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
And it strikes me that my MC Green Student Club should be a second party.
Yeah. We had, out in Boyd's, there, my dad had a church there, that he was a pastor. And there was if I can get a hold of them and find them, I can get you the information.
That'd be very
Because
cool.
there's a few loops you gotta jump
Yeah.
through
Yeah.
because of county food policy and how they can deal with leftover, I'm sure.
Yeah, you have to throw it away. We aren't allowed to give it away.
So there has to be
Ignorant as that sounds.
some,
Well, that's the area where we need to get to the county. What the
Yeah.
hell are you doing that for?
Mhm.
You're forcing people to throw away absolutely fine food instead of feeding the poor. And we're in a blue state, so we can make the county change their policy. Ike Leggett's running for a new term. Did you see that? Be interesting. My student club had some issues with him a few years ago because he wanted to turn this one. We have 3 organic farms in our county apparently, and he wanted to turn one of them into 4 soccer fields. And so the student club fought that, and it's not soccer fields right now.
Yeah.
It's still an organic farm, but we really don't know where it's going in the future. But it looks like Chris Van Hollen committed to supporting Ike Leggett, our county executive. I bet he's reelected. All right, let's take a look at this outline is from the introduction chapter of our book. And most of the PowerPoints that I have are fairly faithful outlines of the content in the chapter. And consequently, they can be used to help you organize your thinking about the text. And I don't, I wanted to remain faithful to the way they selected this book here. And I think it does provide a useful resource for students at your age and given your skills. So I've stayed faithful to the text for the most part. And they do begin with a very interesting, there are two authors to our text. And they begin with a fairly interesting idea that humans are indeed idiots. We do stupid things regularly. And they provide examples. So in Butte City, California, you know, it's 100 degrees in the shade generally, particularly now. And apparently, they are going through an economic downturn in Butte City, California. Jobs were leaving, and one of the last attempts at making a business work in Butte City was to start a tanning salon. A tanning salon in Butte City, California, where it's regularly over 100 degrees, where people are going out of their way to get into the shade. And you want to build a tanning salon. That is stupid. You know, a business plan appropriately laid out would tell you you have no demand for this here. You need to go elsewhere. This is stupid. And we regularly do stupid things. So in Atlanta, Georgia, I believe, there's this group of people who are following this sage who, you know, if you can quote the Bible, you can get people to believe just about anything. But this guy says that if you stare at the sun, it provides you energy and clarity of thought. Stare right at it. Go ahead. Right at it. And people do this. You stare at the sun, you know, it makes you go blind, man. It's just stupid. I love the last one, though. So there's this wives' tale, apparently, that if you eat Vicks Vapor Rub, it cures the common cold. Here's the thing. The common cold runs its course in 2 or 3 days. So you can eat dirt and the common cold will go away. Eat dirt, it makes it go away. People have done this. They have eaten Vicks Vapor Rub to make a cold go away. They have stared at the sun.
It lubricates your GI tract, flushes out all the bacteria. That's what happened. My son got a hold of one time and started eating it, so I called poison control. And they're like, don't worry, it'll just give him diarrhea. Make sure he's hydrated, and that's what it does. It lubricates your tract and flushes out all the bacteria, so you're actually more susceptible for future illnesses.
The body is an amazing thing. Even when you do not read the instructions, the body will compensate. The body will compensate. And one way the body compensates is that we engage in critical thinking, and we don't do stupid things. That would be a good thing. So, critical thinking is the careful application of reason in the determination of whether a claim is true. This can prevent us, keep us from doing stupid things. We can apply it to the reasoning of our president, the president of the college, the president of our company. We can apply critical thinking to our own reasoning. And when you critique your own reasoning or the reasoning of somebody else, you don't have to be insulting that person. You don't have to attack that person. And actually in philosophy, If somebody critiques an article that you've written, it's a compliment. Why? Anybody know why?
The time to read it.
Absolutely. And you're not going to criticize somebody who's way over here. You're only going to be working on people in your area that are close. So if somebody criticizes your work, they're in a way saying that you're close to the bell and I can help you get there. And so at the end of my graduate study, when I have my dissertation, I'm looking for people who don't like me. You want to read it? Last thing I need is somebody to read it and say, good job. Good job? That doesn't help me at all. It doesn't help me improve it at all. So critical thinking can be a good thing. If your boss comes in and says, here's what you're doing right, here's what you could do better, that is something that you can use to get better and to get a promotion. Of course, everybody hates it when you're critiqued by somebody. I think there was something on NPR just yesterday that said we all hate performance reviews. People who are really engaged in their job hate it because they don't like maybe getting a bad review. Those who are not even caring, they hate it because you're wasting my damn time. Turns out nobody likes a performance review. However, the point here is that critical thinking doesn't mean that you're insulting somebody. That can be a form of a compliment. So let's begin to break down some terms here. We're going to use some terms, some vocabulary in a specific way, and it's important that we all use the words correctly and we all understand their meaning. So one of the first terms we're going to look at is a claim. A claim is simply a statement that is true or false. For example, one could claim that Montgomery County is the most populous county in Maryland. That's a claim that's either true or false. I don't know which. Do you know? If you were to make a statement like this, Montgomery County is the most populous county in Maryland, that would be a claim. You're claiming that this is true. Many claims do not require much critical thinking or critical investigation. For example, yes, it is cold outside and we don't need a weatherman to tell us this. So some claims don't require a whole bunch of critical investigation. However, when somebody says that the strength of our country depends on cutting spending, there are going to be some who disagree. And so critical thinking will be required to interpret the value of this claim. So claims simply take a stand. They take a stand. Issues do not. They are questions about whether a claim is true. We settle issues by determining whether a claim is true or not. For example, this is true. Get this. The Virginia State Senate recently, I think this was a couple years ago, considered the issue of whether it should be illegal to wear clothes that expose the wearer's underwear. We're talking about the pants. Now, that question about whether it should be illegal or not is the issue. A claim takes a stand and says it should not or it should. An issue merely raises the question. A claim would take a stand on that issue. How about an argument? An argument is when we offer a reason for thinking a claim is true. When we offer a reason for thinking a claim is true, then we're offering an argument. And arguments are going to tend to have two parts to them: a premise and a conclusion. The premise is a claim that is offered as a reason for believing the conclusion is true. And the conclusion is the claim which we're trying to establish. So arguments, at the very least, are going to have two parts, premise and conclusion. The arguments we'll tend to look at are going to be much more complicated. They will have multiple premises. Sam's grandmother died, and he had to attend the funeral. Therefore, Sam should be excused for missing class. That would be an argument with a premise and a conclusion. Now we need to be careful, to understand the difference between an argument and an explanation. An argument and an explanation. Does anybody want to take a first crack at the difference here? What's the difference between an argument and an explanation? Yes, sir.
I think an explanation is a summary of facts, and an argument is you're supporting a claim that you believe is true.
That's close. That's close. Let's consider an example. Do I have any? Yeah. Arguing that a dog has fleas is different from explaining what caused the fleas. So let's consider this. Somebody give me an argument that your dog has fleas.
My dog scratches himself more often than normal, therefore he has fleas.
All right, so that is a good argument that your dog has fleas. You present a premise, an empirical fact, your dog is scratching more than normal. Reasonable conclusion is that there's some fleas in there. All right, somebody offer an explanation that the dog has fleas. An explanation. Yes, ma'am?
My dog has fleas because he ran into the bush and got fleas.
Yes. That's explaining how the dog got fleas. The argument is trying to establish that the dog has fleas. The explanation is attempting to explain how the dog got the fleas. So one could say that in terms of an explanation, we could say, well, we took our dog to your aunt's place, and she had that bush, and the dog ran up against that bush, and her cat also had fleas, and that cat ran upside that bush too. So we're offering an explanation for how the dog got the fleas. We're not as much focused simply on the argument that establishes the fact that the dog has fleas. So an explanation is going to try to provide an explanation for how the fleas got there. An argument is merely going to establish the conclusion that the dog has fleas. So the two can be different, although they seem to be similar. An explanation is going to offer an explanation for how this thing came about. An argument is merely going to establish the fact that it is the case. Now, here's where we come to an interesting juncture in the road. Arguments and persuasion. An argument is not necessarily an attempt to persuade others. And that's true. In many cases, an argument can be used to persuade yourself. And there are many theologians who come up with proofs for God's existence, and this helps them feel more confident in their own view. So arguments are not necessarily offered to persuade others, but that is often why they're used. Right? And so arguments are not based just on persuading others, but they're often used for that purpose. And we need to keep that in mind. In order for arguments to be effective, they have to be persuasive. And so in this class, we're going to focus more on the arguments themselves and the logic that they use. And we're going to try to get you to understand the difference between the logic of an argument and the use of rhetoric just to persuade you. We're going to help you understand the difference. Now, in the future, you need to put these back together, and you need to do it in the right way. So you need to come up with an argument that's going to be sound and valid. But you're also going to have to use rhetoric that won't alienate your audience, won't insult them, and that will lead them in the right direction. So in order to be effective, we're going to have to join arguments with rhetoric and persuasion. But in order to know how to do that, we have to first learn how to separate them and understand them separately. And that's what we'll be doing in this class primarily. Often, arguments really aren't the most effective thing to use to persuade people. That's why you don't see a whole lot of